On Rugby Road, and to all who are joining us online via Zoom. As we come together for worship, we begin, as we always do, with the musical prelude offered this morning by Scott Deveaux. Well, good morning. Welcome to the UU Congregation of Charlottesville. My name is Reverend Tim Temerson. It is wonderful to be gathered for worship this morning, both online and here on Rugby Road. This sanctuary was built over 70 years ago on land that was once the homeland of the Monacan people and that was once cared for by enslaved people from Africa and their descendants. We honor all who dwelt here and all in our congregation whose lives led to this moment of our gathering as a community of memory and hope. I invite you now to take a moment to greet others who are with us in worship this morning. Those of you online can unmute. Hello. I thought you were going to finish the announcement for me, so those online can unmute and say hello to one another, and those of us here in the sanctuary or in the social hall are welcome to greet your neighbors, especially those you may not know.
Good morning.
Good morning,
everybody.
Good morning.
Hello, everybody.
Morning. Hi,
Good
Fran.
morning.
Hey, Breck. So when I call you up, just come up to the...
They sound like they're having a good time.
Yes. I hope everyone's all right.
Yep.
So far.
Hopefully I will be back in the sanctuary next week.
Are you still positive or are you?
No.
Yay.
Yay.
Yeah.
Only 19 days I was positive.
Oh, man.
Oh my gosh.
Crazy.
That sounds like a little toodle back to.
I know, but mornings are still kind of rough with
our congregation and invite you to join us for fellowship after the service in the social hall. Feel free to use one of our red coffee mugs, which are especially for newcomers to our congregation. We continue to ask everyone in the sanctuary and throughout the building to keep your high-quality N95 or KN95 mask in place, covering both your nose and mouth. If you don't have a face mask, we have plenty and we'd be happy to provide you with one. And when you're in the social hall, you may remove your mask while actively eating or drinking. In addition to the sanctuary, seating is available in the social hall where there's a live stream of the service. Everyone is welcome in the sanctuary, but if you need a roomier space, the social hall can be a good option. Please do whatever you need to feel comfortable as we worship together. Many thanks to all the folks helping us share worship both here and online, our on-site greeters, ushers, and hospitality and logistics team. Special thanks to the fabulous AV tech, Rachel Buckland, supporting dual platform worship both online and here on Rugby Road. Our thanks to Director of Music, Scott Deveaux, for sharing his musical gifts with us. And I'm very delighted to be weaving worship with myself this morning. Thank you. And now here to greet you from your Board of Trustees is Brett Gastinger.
Thank you, and good morning. If you're like me, this part of spring can be just a little bit terrifying as things start to emerge from the ground a little bit earlier than you remembered, or a little bit, well, trust me, I've got someone in our household that tracks these things pretty closely. This year is almost 2 weeks ahead of time. And just as one of our most visible symbols of, or visible ways that we see our world and our climate changing right before our eyes, it can be scary. And at the same time, there are these just jaw-dropping moments of beauty and joy. And certainly this past week, there were several of those for me, whether it was seeing the twin leaf emerge in our yard, or the magnolia up by the rotunda, and here some of the magnolias have just been outstanding, or seeing Venus and Jupiter so bright and together in the early evening sky. And I see that in your faces as well, as I see fellow UUs around town, or even here in the hall. It seems like everyone has just a little bit more pep in their step and smiles on their faces. I see it in the energy behind the cottage conversations and the pledge drive and all of the exciting things happening around this place. So it is with that spirit of joy and gratitude that I say welcome this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Breck. Here are our announcements this morning. For those of you who are new to our congregation, we will be holding our monthly newcomer circle today at 12:15. And because the weather is so nice, we're going to actually go outside and we're going to actually be on the patio. I'm so directionally challenged by the Remembrance Garden. Which way is that? That away, right over there. And so we'll have some chairs set up, and it's just 30 minutes of relaxed conversation. I'll be there. We'll just chat about UU and the congregation, and it'll be a good time. We'll have you out of there by 12:45. And we do have childcare today, so if you have young ones, you're welcome to bring them along, but we also have childcare as well. I just want to mention as well that next Saturday we'll be holding our kind of quarterly new members and friends class, and if anybody is interested in potentially signing up for that, that's on a Saturday morning and into the early afternoon. But Kate Soderman is here. Kate, can you raise your hand? So Kate is the she's the sign-up genius. That's the way I'll put it. So if you're interested in attending that class, please do let Kate know as well. Our congregation's youth are selling attractions coupon books in the social hall to support their upcoming service trip to repair homes in Appalachia through the Appalachian Service Project. The books cost $25. Proceeds go to expenses, including nightly ice cream after a hard day's work, gas and scholarships and more. Your generosity gives you a bonus of discount coupons to find and fast food dining, all kinds of entertainment, auto maintenance, hardware stores, and more. Youth and their advisors, thank you very much. For more information, speak with Margaret Gorman in the social hall. If you have not registered yet to be part of a cottage conversation, which Breck mentioned as we develop a new mission and purpose for our congregation, please be sure to sign up. I believe there are 3 cottage conversations happening today at 12:30. If you have not participated in one, I probably shouldn't be riffing on this, but if you haven't participated in one, you might be able to drop in. I'm not sure how full they are. So there'll be one here in the sanctuary, one in the minister's office. That's how many we have going today. And I think one in the parlor. So if you're interested, you could just stop in and say, hey, do you have an extra seat? Because it's a wonderful thing, and there's been a great spirit, and many, many people have been participating. If you can't attend today but are interested in being part of one, you can email mission@uucharlottesville.org to sign up for a conversation. And that concludes our announcements. So now let us settle ourselves for worship. And our call to worship this morning is one I really, really like a lot. It's by Reverend David Pohl. He says, "We come to this time and place to rediscover the gift of free religious community, to renew our faith in the holiness, goodness, and beauty of life, to reaffirm the way of the open mind and the loving heart, to rekindle the flame of memory and hope, and to reclaim the vision of an earth made fair with all its people one. Come, let us worship together." I'd now like to invite Ryan Repass to come forward to light our flaming chalice this morning. Thank you, Ryan, for volunteering. And as Ryan lights our chalice, I'd like to ask Rachel to put our unison chalice lighting words up on the screen. "We gather this hour as people of faith with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning in celebration of the life we share together." And now let's do our hand motions and the words that go with them. We light this chalice to celebrate Unitarian Universalism. This is the church of the open mind. This is the church of the helping hands. This is the church of the loving hearts. So I'd now like to invite you to rise in body or spirit, join in singing our opening hymn. It's number 145 as Tranquil Streams. Before Scott begins, let me just give you 2 seconds on the origins of this hymn. It's really interesting. This hymn was written in the 1930s. I know you're like, okay, he's going to talk, I better sit back down. So this hymn was written in the 1930s before the Unitarians and the Universalists came together, but it was written by a lyricist who felt that the two denominations were starting to really come together and find a shared purpose. And she wrote this hymn as a way of saying, look at all that we have in common. And in 1961, when the two denominations formally voted to merge, this is the hymn they sang when at the moment that we became Unitarian Universalism. So now that you've had the history, please rise in body or spirit.
Our kindred hearts and minds unite to build
may be seated. Okay, so this month is Women's History Month. As many of you have gotten to know me, you know I love history, and I especially love Unitarian Universalist history. So today I want to invite the young and young at heart to come on down and join me down here on the red carpet. Make sure you're sitting so that you can see the screen, because I'm going to show you some pictures and some images. And everybody's welcome to come down if you want to, because what I want to do today is tell you a story about a famous scientist who was a woman and who was also a Unitarian Universalist. So good morning, everyone. How are you all doing? Good, good. It's so good to see you all this morning. So the person I want to tell you about lived quite a few years ago in the 1800s, and her name was Maria Mitchell. Anybody ever heard of her? Let me ask you. Oh, okay, great. Does anybody here know what an astronomer is? What does an astronomer do? Yes. Yes.
An astronomer is somebody who studies the stars, and it's kind of like a scientist on the stars.
Yes, an astronomer, that's perfect. An astronomer is somebody who studies the stars and is like a scientist with the stars. Yes, Ethan?
Astronomers have discovered outer space.
Astronomers have discovered lots of things in outer space. And I'm going to tell you about something Maria Mitchell discovered too, which is pretty cool. So let me first show you a couple of pictures of her. So this is what she looked like. That's on the left there. It's when she was a younger woman and when she sort of was starting out as an astronomer. And then that's her when she was older and pretty famous, when she was a professional astronomer, very well known, and a professor at a college called Vassar College. And she was born on an island off the coast of Massachusetts where you could really see lots and lots of stars. Her parents really believed in education, and they made sure that she had a wonderful education. And her dad, he loved looking at the stars and looking through telescopes and making clocks and things like that. So he and Maria would go outside many nights and would look at the stars, look at the planets and such. And Maria actually really began to study all the science. She learned a lot about math and physics, all the science behind what she was looking at. And she just loved it so very much. Here's a drawing of Maria looking through a telescope. That's very much like the telescope that her dad had that she would look through. And she would spend many nights looking through that telescope. And one night when she was out by herself, she was looking through that telescope and she saw something she had never seen before. Who here knows what a comet is? Oh my gosh, we got a church full of astronomers here. Good Lord. Yes, what's a comet? Uh-huh. Yeah, it's kind of like a star, and it's got kind of like a head and a tail, and it does go across the sky. That's right. Yes, back there. Comets are made of ice and dust and rocks and all kinds of stuff. Yeah, in fact, I got a picture right here.
I know what.
Is that kind of what a comet looks like? Yeah.
Also, it has like holes in it.
Yeah.
Comets are like meteors.
Comets are kind of like meteors. They're kind of like meteors, yeah.
Meteors are made out of dust.
Yes, they are. They're made out of dust and ice. So, Reverend Leah, do you have an astronomy class these guys can sign up for? My goodness. Or maybe they should teach it. I don't know. I should sign up for it. Yeah. So let me tell you back to Maria. So when Maria was out looking at night, she had learned the night sky so well, and she saw a comet that she had never seen before. And she realized that maybe she was the first person who had ever seen this comet, and she was. So Mariah Mitchell, who at that time was probably in her 20s, she discovered a new comet. And she was, listen to this, she was the first person from the United States, first American, who ever discovered a new comet. That's pretty amazing. In fact, she won a big award for it. The King of Denmark had announced he was going to give a prize for the first person who ever discovered a new comet through a telescope. And Mariah got that prize. And that made her very famous. And she became a professional astronomer. In fact, in the United States, she's the first woman who was ever a professional, meaning she got paid for it and had a job as an astronomer, the first one ever. That's pretty cool, I think. That is pretty cool. And here's some pictures of Mariah when she became a professional astronomer and had lots of students who studied with her. And you can see they were looking through lots of telescopes. That's the observatory on the right that she was in charge of and that she led. Yeah, observatories are cool. You've seen observatories on TV. Absolutely, absolutely. So no question about it. So that's just really, really amazing. Now, I said before, we've talked a lot about her science. I said before that she was a Unitarian Universalist. So when she grew up, she actually wasn't part of Unitarian Universalism, but she decided that the religion that her parents had raised her in, it was good, but it just felt kind of strict and kind of like it was all about believing certain things. And Mariah loved to ask questions. And we've talked a lot about the importance of asking questions in Unitarian Universalism. Another thing that Mariah did was she believed so much in the importance of her imagination. She thought to be a great scientist, you had to ask questions and have a great imagination, which, by the way, was something that Albert Einstein thought too. And I think that's what makes her so amazing, is that she was a wonderful scientist, but she was also a great UU because she thought that it was important in science and in religion to ask questions and to use your imagination. And those are both so important in Unitarian Universalism. And I know you guys ask great questions, fabulous questions, most of which I don't have good answers to, but that's okay, because I learn from your questions, and I know you guys have great imagination. So I hope that you will continue to ask questions and use your imagination, and who knows, maybe we've got a future famous astronomer sitting right here on this floor. Yeah, so anyway, well, thank you all so much for listening to a story about Mariah Mitchell. And Ethan, do you have one final comment or question? Yeah.
One time, somebody discovered a green comet.
A green comet? Wow. Maybe you and I will have to talk about that at coffee hour sometime. You can tell me more about it. That sounds really interesting. So, all right, well, why don't we now sing our kids off to their classes? Thank you all very much.
As we leave this friendly place of give I do every face, may the kindness which we learn might our hearts till we return. As we leave this friendly place of give I to every face, may the kindness which we learn light our hearts till we return.
I love the kids in this church. They are just so wonderful, so smart, so curious. And they know a lot more than I do, which I love. I always feel like I learn so much more from them than they learn from me. But anyway, they're just wonderful. So I now want to invite us into a time of centering and sharing. And I want to share a prayer with you written by my UU ministerial colleague, the Reverend Jude Geiger. Spirit of renewal, God of many names, and one transforming and abundant love. We turn this month in our nation's life to reflect on the stories, the heritage, and the struggles of women throughout the ages. We seek to learn from all those voices that have been left unheard. May we pause before the silences of the ages, find who has been left out, and craft new ways of inclusion. For every week and every month, may this spiritual practice bring out the voices of all those struggling, all those left apart. May we let go of our assumptions and cold comforts of what is the normal, unless it be a standard that is rooted in compassion, inclusivity, and diversity. May this month of reflection teach us to search for those stories that are different from our own. Divine Mother of possibilities, in the finding, may we come to know ourselves changed, renewed when we are dry, hopeful where we are lost, and open where we are closed. Amen. Friends, we are an interconnected community that cares for one another. Part of how we embody this care is by making time to share the joys and sorrows we hold in our hearts. I will now share what was submitted before worship this morning. I will now light a candle for all the joys and sorrows that remain unspoken, whether large or small, but deep in our hearts. This community offers its love and support to what is closer to our hearts. Another way we show our care for one another is in sharing our financial gifts with our community and our congregation. Today begins a new social action collection for the month of March, which will be taking place for the Charlottesville Public Housing Association of Residents, or FAR. And we are very blessed to be joined today by their new executive director, interim executive director, Taylor Frome, who is going to tell us more about FAR's mission and work. Taylor, please come up. Welcome.
Good morning, and thank you for inviting me to speak this morning. Good morning. I am, as stated, I am the interim executive director of FAR, and very excited to be able to work with that organization. And I don't know how much people know about public housing in Charlottesville, but there are about 1,000 people living in public housing in Charlottesville. 85% of them are Black. The other are a combination of whites and refugees. And in the last few years, I think there have been quite a group of Afghan refugees, especially, coming into public housing. And public housing is set up for people of very low income in order to have stable housing. In Charlottesville, most of the housing was built 50 years ago and is in major need of upgrade. But this is a really exciting time because every unit of housing in Charlottesville public housing is either being completely replaced with new construction or getting major renovations. And What FAR is doing, and this may not sound like much, but it's really radical, is all of those changes have been resident-led. So we organize the residents to come into meetings about selecting the developer, looking at the design, looking at the actual materials, looking at the appliances, all of the things that will go into the houses that they live in. They have a chance to discuss, to work through. There's a lot of training involved in that, as you can imagine. But what this does is public housing residents become empowered residents living in places that are of their choosing and of their design, which is something that most of us think of as a right, but has been denied them most of their, throughout history. And so this is something that it's just a very exciting piece of work, but that FAR is central in the Charlottesville Redevelopment and Housing Authority is the entity that owns the properties and actually leverages the funding for all of that redevelopment. What FAR does is work with the residents, going door knocking to tell people what's going on, being at meetings with them to make sure that things are sometimes broken down into a different level of detail and the assumptions aren't made, and that resident voices are heard. And I guess the last bit, I don't have a whole lot more to say, is that half of the funding for FAR staff is grassroots fundraising. So your contribution is really an essential part of our ability to do that work. And one more piece, we are looking to hire a full-time executive director. I'm an interim. I came in because Shelby Edwards, who many of you may have heard of, relocated to Chicago, which is something she'd been really dreaming about for a long time. So she relocated in the fall, and I'm here just to keep things going and manage the search process. So if anyone is interested in that position or knows somebody who is, or is interested in more information about FAR, our website is farcville.org. That's PHARCVILLE.org. And thank you.
Thank you so much, Taylor, for sharing that important information about FAR, which does incredibly important work here in Charlottesville. So we encourage those of you here today and on Zoom who are attending to give generously to support FAR. Rachel, can you show us it's already there, of course. And there's instructions about how you can contribute either by text or Venmo. Those of you who are here in the sanctuary, if you would like to contribute cash or check, please make sure you place your cash or check in the social action collection envelopes, or these white envelopes that should be scattered around the sanctuary. There are more up there on the credenza if you don't see any nearby. And so pop those in the envelope and you can bring them forth when we take the offering. And just a reminder, no need to seal the envelope. We recycle and reuse. So please make sure you do that. And please do give generously. In addition to our social action collection, each week we invite everyone into the spiritual practice of generosity by giving to the ministry of our congregation. Through your pledges and with this weekly Sunday morning offering, together our financial gifts and support build the future of our congregation. This is our shared ministry. And there's the weekly offering slide. During the music that follows, you may choose to make your Sunday morning offering by using the text address or going to the church website. Here in the sanctuary, you can bring cash or checks forward. You are invited to share not only your financial gifts, but also share the joys and sorrows in your hearts. Those online may put them in the chat box. Those of you in the sanctuary may come forward to place a stone in the water. You may also leave us a note on the joy and sorrow paper provided over there on the credenza. And let us now dedicate all of the many gifts we share with one another by saying, we accept your gifts with gratitude. We use them wisely for the highest good. Let us begin. And as always, we thank you so very much for your generosity. So right now, I'd like you to join with me in a responsive reading. I'll be doing the reading. You'll be doing the responding. And I'm not going to put it up on the screen because it's pretty easy. When I give you the signal, I want you all to respond with, "Hey, ain't that good news?" Got it? Okay. All right. We don't need to practice, I assume. Okay. This is a reading created by my colleague, John Corrado, and I really like it a lot. We believe there is a place at the table for each and every person on earth. Nice. We believe the giver of life has been given many names and loves the givers of all of them. We are more interested in getting heaven into people now than getting people into heaven later. We believe religious scriptures are open doors rather than sealed vaults. We believe true evangelism is more about preaching practiced than practiced preaching. We believe peace and justice are not just words we form with our lips, but realities we shape with our lives. We believe we are one with stars and trees and tigers and rivers and all the stuff of life. We believe our lives are all about growing hearts that love, minds that seek, and hands that serve. And let us all say together, amen. All right. Well done. My goodness, we got a room full of preachers here this morning. I love it. So, well, it's good to be with you all this morning. As many of you may have heard, I have been wrestling with COVID the last couple of weeks. I'm over the contagious part, and I haven't coughed so far. That's good. And I just want to thank everyone who pitched in while I was recovering at home. Thankfully, I only had a mild case, and I'm feeling much better now. And I also want to just say thank you for all the cards and emails and all of you who have encouraged me to take it slow and not overdo it. So you guys are just a wonderful, loving, kind bunch of people, and I so appreciate it. I'm also very happy this morning to be able to share that responsive reading with you from John Corrado. I love the way John describes the good news of our faith tradition, Unitarian Universalism. As he says so well, we are more concerned with getting heaven into people than in getting people into heaven. And we affirm that peace and justice aren't just nice sounding words that we form with our lips, but realities that we shape with our lives. That is good news. And I don't know about you, but I could certainly use some good news. Although my privilege shields me from so much of the harm and injustice that so many face, every day, the world just seems to be harsh, more intolerant, and sometimes even more hurtful. And rather than addressing that brokenness, so many of our political leaders, I feel, stoke fear and resentment as they implement policies and use rhetoric that is so clearly designed to harm, and especially harm those already living at the margins of society. The poor, the undocumented, people and especially women of color, those who are transgender, and so many others. And you'll have to pardon me, I'm going to kind of go off a little bit here. And if the actions of our political leaders aren't bad enough, I am just getting more frustrated and angered by the support and encouragement those leaders are getting from voices in organized religion. I'm sure you won't be surprised to learn that I've never had much in common with religiously or politically with those on the Christian right. And I don't usually talk about them too much, but never did I imagine that so many who live and worship in the name of Jesus of Nazareth would choose to support and provide religious cover and justification for policies, I'm sorry, but that go against everything Jesus taught and everything Jesus did in his life. I mean, what gospel, what good news are these folks reading? How can one who follows the teachings of Jesus remain silent or indifferent in the face of poverty and food insecurity and a crisis of homelessness? and affordable housing? Or how can someone who dedicates their life to that gospel support policies that are so blatantly racist, sexist, anti-immigrant, and anti-LGBTQ when the Christian Gospels so clearly proclaim the good news of justice for the poor, welcoming the stranger, and liberation for the oppressed? That's what these texts say, but that's not what we hear coming from the mouths of so many who claim to speak for Jesus and for God. I just don't get it. I heard someone at the current CPAC conference going on, some minister, who said that the goal of Christians and of a particular political party should be to end transgenderism. What in the world does that mean? And what does that have to do with religion or Christianity? We're going to end a group of people for being who they are? That's not, I never heard Jesus, never read of Jesus saying anything like that. That is not the good news. That's hate. That's a prescription and a call, I'm sorry to say, for violence. And that is not what religion is supposed to be about. All right, I'll get off my soapbox now. Now, the title of today's sermon is The Gospel or the Good News of Unitarian Universalism. And I do want to make it clear that when I criticize the Christian right, I'm not including all Christians or all of Christianity. There are many wonderful Christians, many that we work very closely with, who are bravely following the call of Jesus and who are actively resisting a hate-filled and unjust status quo. There are many Christians of conscience who are speaking up and taking action. In fact, I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that there is a struggle going on right now for the very soul of Christianity. Now, we Unitarian Universalists haven't generally been part of these conversations, not anymore, within Christianity for quite some time. For those of you who are unfamiliar or new to Unitarian Universalism, our tradition began as two small, very religiously progressive traditions within Christianity, but I would say in the last 100 years or so, our theological and spiritual reach has led us beyond the confines of any one religious tradition or one sacred text as we embrace the wisdom and teachings of many diverse traditions and sources of truth. But let me simply say that we do share much in common with progressive Christians, and I hope, I'll just say it, I hope they prevail in this struggle for the soul of Christianity. Now, what I do want to talk about today is what I see as our Unitarian Universalist good news. That, you know, is what the word gospel actually means. It means good news. And the reason I chose to use it in the title for today's sermon is because I think that Unitarian Universalism offers very good news and a very hopeful message for a world that is so broken and so in need of a new and different vision of religion and of how the human family can and should live together. Now, like the Christian Gospels, our UU Gospel, if you will, is very much rooted in a story. Although rather than being a story about one person from the past, our UU Gospel story is the story of many Unitarian Universalists throughout our history and many in this congregation today. The UU story is always unfolding, always being told and retold. And I'd like to share with you my understanding of that story. And our story almost always begins with a question or questions. Questions about life and death, God and humanity, good and evil, religion and spirituality, and so much more. It is the spirit of questioning, that same spirit that Mariah Mitchell embodied. It's that spirit of questioning that gave rise to both the Unitarian and Universalist sides of our tradition. And it is these questions that continue to lead so many to our congregations today. I certainly had many of those questions the first time I journeyed into a UU congregation, 25 years ago. That's hard to believe. Like many in our faith, I grew up in a different religious tradition, a tradition that didn't always feel very open to my questions or to any questions at all. What was required instead was what felt like an unquestioning acceptance of a particular creed and a particular sacred text. And if you summoned the courage to express questions or doubts, more often than not, the response was judgment and perhaps even exclusion, something that didn't feel very much like love or acceptance. That was the experience, and yes, I would say the religious baggage I carried the first time I came through the doors of a Unitarian Universalist congregation. I remember feeling anxious about what I would hear from the pulpit and how I would be received by the community. I was worried that they might ask, well, what are your beliefs? Because I didn't really know. I had a bunch of questions and not very many answers. Much to my surprise and relief, I soon learned that Unitarian Universalism is very different than anything I had ever encountered. The longer I attended services at that congregation, the more I heard the minister say things like that I had never heard in a religious community before. It's good to have questions, good to ask questions. It's fine if you have doubts. It's okay not to have all the answers or even any answers, and simply to say, I don't know, or I don't believe. I'm figuring it out. When I heard this minister say those kinds of things, that's when I became a Unitarian Universalist. And I remember feeling in that moment that I had found my spiritual home. And I think the reason I was so moved by those words was simply the fact that for the first time in my life, what I experienced in religion was unconditional love and acceptance for who I was, not judgment or exclusion for who I wasn't. I felt spiritually liberated and set free. And what I came to learn about Unitarian Universalism is that that freedom is at the heart of this faith. The freedom to seek, to question, to find one's own authentic path and develop one's own spiritual convictions. As one of our most famous ministers once put it, Unitarian Universalism seeks to stir up the mind, not to stamp it with a creed or a dogma. Unitarian Universalism seeks to inspire a fervent love of truth, rather than confining the mind or the spirit or the heart to one religious tradition or one sacred text. And Unitarian Universalism seeks in everything it does to help each and every one of us touch inward springs of peace, of serenity, of compassion, inward springs that live in all of us, but that are so often lost or buried under an avalanche of fear, anxiety, judgment, and exclusion. So I became a member of that Unitarian Universalist congregation and got very involved in its ministries and programs. And I soon learned something else that is at the heart of our good news. For most of our history, the freedom Unitarian Universalists have celebrated and experienced inside our congregations has led them to affirm that freedom, compassion, justice, and peace are the birthright of all people. Every person matters. Every person has a right to be free. Every person is deserving of love and acceptance for who they are. All the judgments and barriers that divide humankind into us and them, friend and enemy, saved and unsaved, all those barriers must be overcome so that the whole human family can flourish. That flourishing is what I experience in this faith, and as a Unitarian Universalist, I am called to do what I can to build a world in which all people can flourish and all people can experience the healing and transforming power of love and justice. And it is that calling that leads Unitarian Universalists to do the work of justice and to see religion as not something to believe in, but as something you must live and something you must do. In Unitarian Universalism, religion is most certainly a verb, meaning we are more interested in deeds than creeds. We have a hard time understanding how some religions stress being saved in the next life when there is so much suffering and injustice and so much healing that needs to be done right here and now. That is a question Unitarian Universalists continually ask themselves, and the answer always leads us to act and to serve. And I just want to tell you that in the 6 or 7 months that I have been here, I cannot express how proud and inspired I am by this congregation and all that you are doing to serve and help others. This past Friday, I got to witness the monthly food pantry we operate right here on our property, on our grounds in front of Summit House. It was so wonderful and inspiring to see so many volunteers from our congregation braving a wet, chilly day to offer a wide assortment of delicious perishable and non-perishable food. And I was also impressed by the wonderful spirit of community and friendship that was in the air, both among our volunteers and among our guests. And many of you who were volunteering are sitting in this room or on Zoom right now. And the monthly food pantry is just one part of all that this congregation is doing to help build a better world. We're supporting wonderful organizations like FAR, serving hot meals at the Haven, supporting refugee families, partnering with Impact, and providing safe space for LGBTQ plus organizations and groups, and so much more. But you know what, folks? For all we're doing, it's not enough. It's not nearly enough. The world, the community of Charlottesville, they need more from the UU Congregation of Charlottesville. And that, folks, is where all of you come in. We need your passion and your commitment, your ideas and your creativity. If you are currently leading or volunteering as part of one of our many ministries, thank you so much for all that you are doing. And if you have not found a way yet to get involved in what we are doing here at UUCville, I invite you to find something about which you are passionate. Take a class. Volunteer at the food pantry on a Friday morning. Show up at the upcoming action being led by Impact. Become a greeter on Sunday morning. Help out in the kitchen. Join the choir. Yes, God, I like it. I'd like an extra $1 for that plug. There are so many ways to serve. And if you have an idea for a program or ministry that we aren't currently offering, by all means, talk to one of our leaders. Talk to me. We need your ideas. We need your creativity. And we also need you to pledge generously to the ongoing stewardship campaign. I know we talked about this last Sunday, but I'm going to keep talking about it for the month of March because it is so important that each and every one of us give generously to support all the good work that this congregation is doing. If you have pledged already, thank you so much for your generosity. If you have not made a pledge yet, please do so. You will be contacted soon by a member of the Stewardship Pledge Drive team, and we ask that you make a very, very generous pledge. The fact that we Unitarian Universalists are striving to turn our gospel of love and freedom into deeds of justice and compassion is something for which we should be proud and something that we can and must share with the world. Now look, I've been saying a lot of nice things about us this morning. We're not perfect. We make mistakes. There have been times when we haven't listened or lived up to our own good news. But I believe with all my heart that this congregation and the Unitarian Universalist movement are on a path that will help us live into the fullness of our good news. Through our words and our deeds, may we always be the religion that breaks down the walls of fear and suspicion. May we be the religion that celebrates the truth and beauty that lives in all people and in the vastness of the human experience. And may we be the religion that demonstrates that our differences need not lead to divisiveness, and that human beings can learn together, grow together, work for peace and justice together, and come together to build a world in which all people, no matter who they are, what they believe, where they come from, or who they love, a world in which all people are treated as the beloved creatures of God and are treated with the respect, with dignity, and with the love that all people deserve. That's our good news, folks. Amen, and blessed be. So I now invite us to rise in body or spirit. We're going to sing number 1014. It's got a new title and a few new lyrics. We're going to actually play a video on the screen. It's called Answering the Call of Love. Please rise in body or spirit and join in singing Answering the Call of Love.
The promise of the Spirit, faith, hope, and love abide, and so every soul is blessed and made whole. The truth in our hearts is our God. We are answering the call of love.
To please join us for coffee hour. Those of you who would like to come to the newcomer circle, it'll be starting, if I finish the benediction fairly quickly, in just a few minutes. out on the patio, so please join us for that. Friends, if here you have found freedom, take it with you into the world. If here you have found comfort, go and share it with others. If here you have dreamed dreams, help one another so that they may come true. And if here you have known love, answer love's call and give love back to a world that is hurting and that can use all the love we have to give. Friends, be well. Take very good care of yourselves, of each other, and of the world. May your days be filled with blessing, with kindness, and with joy. And may we together always answer the call of love. Blessed be, and go in peace.